person today and the people who are following via the live stream. So there's going to be no theology class next Sunday, July 20th. Then 27th, there's going to be the last theology class of this year before the summer. And August, no theology classes, and then I'll send you by the end of August the program for next year. The lectures, Sunday theology talks will resume in September. So today, I've been looking forward to today quite a lot because Chagall's crucifixion, the White Crucifixion, is one of my absolute favorite paintings or representations of the crucifixion for a variety of reasons. Now, as you probably already know, Chagall has represented the crucifixion in a variety of paintings. Someone, Jenny, sent me an email this morning saying that there is a glass window in New York with a representation of the crucifixion by Chagall. So it's a theme that he has explored many times and through a variety of means, not only paintings, but also pane windows, etc. But the White Crucifixion, or this version of White Crucifixion, which I discovered completely by accident. I didn't know this. I was in Chicago last year in January. I was completely miserable because the weather was appalling. Cold, and I got sick, etc., etc. And to find a bit of diversion, I went into the Art Institute, and I was like wandering, not very kind of. I was like slightly morose through the galleries, and then I found it. It was like just there, and it was like a miracle for me because it's a painting I've been going back to many times over the years. So Marc Chagall doesn't need really much introduction. It's very well known. For me, there was an exhibition in Paris in 2001, absolutely incredible. That really traced the whole of his history. He was born in Russia. He comes from a Hasidic tradition. Then he moved to Europe, and he was almost everywhere, but essentially mostly in Paris for a long time. And he, the exhibition was very interesting, especially because there was a lot about his childhood and the life in the village where he was from in Russia. And a huge amount of the symbolism in Chagall's paintings really can be understood only if one knows about his childhood. So number 1-3, the spiritual and folkloric rhythms of that world, the world of this village of Vitebsk in Belarus, never left him. Even as he moved through the major cultural centers of his time, St. Petersburg, Paris, Berlin, and eventually New York, his work remained rooted in the metaphysical landscapes and symbolic language of his childhood. Then Chagall's art, as we know, also defies categorization. I've put at the end of the handout a section on some of the artistic influences detectable in Chagall, particularly in these two paintings. But as you can see, just between these two representations of the cross, the first one from 1912, I think, the other one from 1938, the style is dramatically different, even if the symbolism is very similar. So he had no hesitation in using different styles. Number 3, one of the defining characteristics of Chagall's art is its spiritual dimension. Even when not overtly religious, his compositions often, I would say almost always, evoke a sense of transcendence or metaphysical longing. The longing is so important. Figures frequently float, defying gravity. You know, the song of the Wicked musical, defying gravity, and earthly constraint. Light, often supernatural in turn, breaks through darkness. His use of color, lush blues, burning reds, radiant greens, white, creates an emotional intensity that echoes mysticism, memory, and lament. One can say really that his works are visual psalms. Then another hallmark of his work is the integration of Jewish identity and iconography, especially during times of persecution. 1938, when the White Crucifixion was painted, is the year of, as we will see in a moment, of really absolutely appalling escalation of the vexations against Jews, Jewish people in Germany. In response to the rise of Nazism and the horrors of World War II, Chagall created a series of crucifixion paintings, and most notably the White Crucifixion, in which he used Christian symbolism to depict Jewish suffering. So, without further ado, I really want to get into the kind of a closer look to these two paintings. I won't follow your chronological order, otherwise I would have started with the Golgotha. This one is called Golgotha, the green and red one, because I want to focus essentially on the White Crucifixion, but I chose to mention at least Golgotha to give you an idea of the importance of this theme in Chagall's spirituality and art, and at the same time the differences between these two paintings, I think, help us to understand why he was so keen to use the symbolism of the crucifixion. So let's look now. I'd like you to focus, leave the handout and focus on the painting. Just look at the painting here, the White Crucifixion, okay? So Christ is on the cross, and he is depicted wearing a short headcloth rather than the crown of thorns, and a fringed garment in lieu of the traditional loincloth. This garment is a variety of the Jewish ritual prayer shawl. So it's quite interesting that the shawl, which is usually put on the shoulders, is used instead as a loincloth. This garment, yes, and it has two black stripes near its fringed edge and the longer fringes in the corner on your left. Above Christ's head, just over the limits of the upper bar, and also see the shape of the cross is a tau, is not the classical cross. So there is the Indri sign, Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews, which is translated or quoted in the Aramaic version. Notably, in this painting, Christ is lit by a ray of white light from on high, okay, and the halo, also white. If you notice, this halo is both on Christ's head and surrounding the menorah. So this chandelier with 5 candles, no, more than 5, 6 candles here. I think, I can't remember, usually it's 9 candles, but I don't know, not all of them are visible in this painting. Now this, the menorah, this is called the menorah, and this is something which I realized now as I was after I worked on this, etc. for a long time. This morning I was again looking at the notes and checking. And another aspect of the painting I had not thought about before came to me, and it is that the menorah is used still in Jewish religiosity and ritual and liturgy, especially for the Hanukkah, which is the Feast of Lights. and the Festival of Light, and it's a commemoration of the rededication of the Second Temple, so around the time of the Maccabees in the Bible. So quite interesting. You see, light is very important in this painting. The light on the head of Christ, the halo, and the light around the menorah, which should be a source of light, makes a clear connection to the rededication of the temple, which in a sense is a sign of rebirth. For the rededication of the temple is the rebirth for the Jewish people after persecution, distractions, exile, and everything else. So you see, the symbolism has many layers. The more you kind of look into it, the more of those you find. The Jewish context is also echoed above the crucifixion by these incredibly moving, I think, figures, these four characters on the top. So 3 biblical patriarchs and a matriarch, probably Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Rachel, the woman on the left. They hover above the cross, floating out of the darkness into the ray of light that illuminates Christ. Their presence here stems from the popular Jewish legend that after the destruction of the first temple, so you see the temple, first temple, second temple, destruction, rebirth is very present in this painting. God summoned Moses and the patriarchs to share his grief, for they knew how to mourn. They knew how to mourn. So there is a lot in this painting about knowing how to mourn, what mourning means, especially in the presence of horror, the horror of what's happening to the Jewish people. And the woman, Rachel, of course, she is the eternal mourner, as we will see in a moment. Then there are all these other characters and scenes, quite chaotic, going on around the painting. On Christ's left, which means on your right in the painting, there is a synagogue whose Torah ark goes up in flames. There is a soldier with baggy trousers who may be responsible for the fire and opens the doors of the synagogue to reveal the scrolls within, of the ark in particular, I think. Below the soldier lie other objects from the pillaged synagogue, an overturned chair, the torn remnants of a prayer book, a menorah with a tall standback, and what appears to be a lamp, perhaps the eternal light that once hung before the ark. And further below the wandering Jew, but still part of the same scene, an open prayer book and a smoking Torah scroll lie violated on the ground. So the fire and the scattered objects document the pogrom that has taken place in the synagogue. So the wandering Jew, the figure which is here with the bag on his shoulders, the symbol of Jewish homelessness through the ages, attempts to escape to the right, carrying a sack on his shoulders. And below him there is a mother who shields her baby, and she too runs away, this time towards the bottom of the painting. She represents vulnerability and generational trauma. This scene continues on the other side of the cross, where 3 more bearded Jews escape toward the bottom left. One wipes away his tears as he flees. Another, in torn garments, wears an unreadable sign on his chest, which originally read Ich bin Jude, I am a Jew, before Chagall painted over it. Probably to give a bit more universal significance to the painting, not just referring to the historical elements, I suppose. I don't know why. While the third character, who looks back in horror at the burning of the synagogue, escapes wearing only one shoe, but clutching a Torah scroll in his arms and saving it from destruction. Above these three refugees houses lie overturned, broken open, or burning in the snow. To the left, a Jew seemingly consumed by flames lie dead and unburied among the tombstone of a cemetery. Above him stands his empty chair, attended by a faithful goat who appears to wait for him to return to it. Animals, especially goats and cows, in Chagall's paintings, stand for compassion. I think they stand for kind of innocent suffering and compassion. One of the things I remember about the exhibition I saw in Paris was that in his childhood, Chagall had seen a cow being slaughtered, and the look in the eyes of that cow while it was slaughtered really remained with him forever. And especially, cows, but goats as well, stand for a symbol of innocent and suffering and powerlessness in suffering. Other former inhabitants of the village sit outdoors on the snow-covered ground amid the distraction, with a basket and a fiddle beside them, too dispirited either to eat or to console themselves with music. Below them, also quite poignant, there are dispossessed inhabitants of the town that try to flee in an overloaded boat. But since it has only one oar, it seems stuck in the waters, unable to move. And despairing, the refugees lean over the side of the boat, trying to figure out a way to get it to move, or raise their hands to the heavens, seeking salvation. And then on the top, on your left, there is this crowd that is entering into the painting, into the scene, waving red flags and carrying swords and farm implements as weapons. They probably, the idea is that they are not those who are causing this destruction, but probably helpers. And I'm going to say why in the context now. So let me give you some elements of the historical context of this painting. The book Burning and the Labeling of Jews may refer to events that happened all in 1938 when this painting was realized in Germany. So the first Jewish census in May 17, 1938, the registration and marking of the Jewish businesses, June 14, the forced adoption by Jews of the names Abraham and Sarah, August 17th, the stamping of the letter J into Jewish passports, October 5, the burning of the Torah Ark and the desecration of the scrolls also can be inspired by the destruction of the synagogues in Munich and Nuremberg in June 9 and August 10, still 38. The pogrom on the left side of the painting can be linked with those that occurred throughout the year, reaching their height in Kristallnacht, the Night of Crystal, infamous, November 9 and 10. The attempts of the Jews to flee in the boat refer to, of course, the attempt by many Jewish people to flee Germany at that time. And the armed peasants on the top, on the upper left, have historical meaning, as their red flags indicated that they are Russian communists. They could thus be read not as attacking the village, but as coming to relieve it. For in 1938, Russia was in the vanguard of resistance to Nazi plans for the domination of Europe. Allegedly. I'm reading right now a kind of biography of Stalin based on new findings that shows that probably the main agent, we always think about Hitler as the main cause and agent of the Second World War, but the theory of this book is that Stalin was the agitator behind it. So anyway, history can always be reinterpreted. Invasion of the Poland, but it's not just that. But there's a lot. I mean, his main aim was really to have a war and having the Western powers destroy each other. So he did everything to do this. Anyway, then let's have a look at the kind of quicker, although this painting as well deserves so much consideration. But here is just as a kind of helps us to appreciate more the first one. So this was executed when it was feared in the West that pogroms were about to break out again in Russia. So it's not just the Nazi that persecuted Jewish people. So these pogroms in Russia, because of the so-called Baylis affair. Mendel Baylis, a Jew, had been arrested in July 1911, accused of murdering a Christian child. I mean, the classical accusation which has been used by Christians throughout history to persecute Jewish people, in order to use his blood for ritual purposes in accordance with medieval blood libels. The 2 years spent in jail before his trial in the fall of 1913 called forth displays of antisemitism in Russia and a strong outcry in the West against these abuses and against the very idea of the blood libel. This revival of the blood libel that also was also a leitmotif of the pogroms in 1904 and 06, in which Chagall had only been too aware. And you see, that's the reason why there is so much red probably on the the bottom on your right. So this is a kind of reversal of the blood libel. It is the Jewish child, the Jesus child, who is killed for ritual reasons by the Christians. So you see, Chagall put on the cross a child, the Jewish child, and the ladder is removed, the ladder of the descent is removed from the cross, so that he must remain crucified forever. The blood is drained out of the blue child into the brilliant red ground. She is drenched by this blood. And at the foot of the cross, there are the child's Jewish parents. The father wears a fringed stole, which recalls a traditional prayer shawl again, and is visible below his hand, while the mother exposes her breast to succor, to come to the help of a suffering child. So there is mourning here as well. Yet the blue child is no longer suffering. Drained of his life's blood, he slowly becomes detached from the brownish cross, absorbed into a green and a kind of golden halo. The colors, of course, in photocopies are always difficult to match with the original. But, it's kind of soaring heavenward. And he moves away from his parents, as does the equally blue-garbed figure in the boat with a blue sail, as if it was the soul of the boy that's sailing away. It's a possibility. It's also very, very poignant and very, very strong. So I want to say something about just a few comments without any pretension of being exhaustive. It's just we are calling this series Art and Spirituality, and it's always a way of seeing read, especially from a Christian viewpoint, what are the possible implications of these paintings? But, there are surely many, many more. The first one is Chagall's use of the cross. So you can go back on your handout, number 19. how can the symbol most closely associated with Jewish persecution, the cross, be used to express Jewish suffering itself? Chagall reclaims the crucifixion from the hands of the oppressors and returns it to its roots, not as a theological victory, but as a symbol of unjust suffering, specifically Jewish suffering, and probably a symbol that he was hoping, the West, so-called Christian West, could understand. The cross, in a sense, becomes a mirror. It reflects not redemption, but betrayal, exile, and grief. The cross becomes a universal container for grief, a frame for mourning. Despite its violent legacy, the crucifixion is one of the few visual languages in Western art that holds space for public lament. Chagall uses the crucified body not to convert or to accuse, but to say, look, this is what has happened to us. Not once, but again and again, and it's happening now. So in a sense, it's kind of a therapeutic frame, a way of speaking the unspeakable, of giving Jewish mourning a place within the dominant visual culture that had erased it. And obviously the cross exposes Christian complicity by putting a Jewish Jesus on the cross amid modern pogrom imagery. Chagall draws a devastating moral link. You revere the crucified Christ, but you are crucifying him again in every Jew you persecute. The symbol of Christian identity is turned against the perpetrators. And this makes the painting an act of mourning and an indictment, both therapy and prophecy. And the cross, as a symbol in general, it's always, remember this intersection of the vertical and the horizontal beams is a way of embracing the whole of reality, the whole of history, the whole of the world. And the vertical beam is a way of connecting everything to heaven. Many, many times this symbolism has been highlighted by the fathers of the church. So the cross connects past, present, and eternal mourning. In Jewish thought, especially in the Midrash, mourning is often shared across time. So Rachel, this is why, the mourners on the top of the cross in the White Crucifixion are these eternal mourners, or the people who know how to mourn. Rachel mourns her children in exile, and the patriarchs weep after the destruction of the temple. So the cross becomes a ritual site. It doesn't glorify suffering. It represents it as immemorial so that it won't be lost. And this explains why the Christ, but also the child, is so peaceful. So peaceful. It's like the Cimabue, crucifix, where, Christ is represented, so peaceful, so in the act of embracing the world. In the White Crucifixion, Christ's face is calm, almost meditative. His body is not twisted in agony. His posture is still bathed in a white heavenly light. The light from above and the hovering of patriarchs suggest a heavenward connection, even in suffering. And despite the devastation surrounding him, Christ remains composed, a beacon of endurance and transcendence. And equally, as I mentioned earlier, in Golgotha, the Christ child's body is rising upward, dissolving into a green and a golden halo, and his expression is not pained but detached, almost otherworldly. So in both works, Christ is not an atoning figure, but a symbol of the Jewish people. The serenity of Christ contrasts with the suffering of those around him, underscoring that he represents spiritual endurance. Chagall doesn't focus on Christ's agony, but on his dignity in suffering. In both works, Christ is aloof from violence, not in indifference, but in defiant peace, a mystical protest against the brutality around him. And this kind of calm, this composure, becomes a kind of antidote to violence. It's not passivity, but is moral resistance. The peaceful Christ in White Crucifixion says, "You may destroy our homes, our scrolls, our lives, but our soul is unbroken. We endure." Hence the light and the menorah and the halo and the reference to the second temple. Now, I think that this painting says a lot about the dignity in mourning. So I kind of try to put together 3 points about mourning in particular. So the dignity of mourning, and then whether we or how move on, and what empathy especially we can claim in the presence of this painting. So in the White Crucifixion, rather than portraying grief as chaotic, hysterical, or sentimental, Chagall elevates Jewish mourning into a form of spiritual resilience. This dignity in mourning elevates suffering and lament into a form of witness. So we have seen this about the 4 mourners on the top of the painting, the refugees, and the Jewish parents at the foot of the cross. So number 33, both paintings show that mourning becomes sacred protest, a refusal to let memory be erased by violence. Chagall affirms that even in the face of pogrom, exile, and genocide, the Jewish people can find resilience in their ability to mourn properly. And one of the things that really was unfortunate, tragic about the sort of the Jewish people, especially when they were sent to mass extermination in the camps, is that, how can you mourn when you are destroyed and killed to that scale, when you are pushed to the extreme so that only the instinct of survival remains. So you just try to stay alive. You have no energy to mourn, even to mourn. And when you deprive someone even of the energy to mourn, because you reduce this person to really being barely alive and completely focused on his or her instinct of survival, you deprive the person of memory, you deprive the person of dignity. So the insistence on mourning here and the importance of mourn for these crimes, I think, is a way of giving some dignity to the kind of massive killing that was happening at the time. Chagall presents mourning as a form of holiness. It is not simply a reaction to violence, it is a mode of continuity, a way of keeping God, memory, and identity alive. To mourn with dignity is not to accept death, but to sanctify the loss, to insist on the enduring value of what was taken. One of the aspects of mourning is that, and one of the reasons why moving on from mourning is so difficult from grief, is that it is the only thing that keeps the person alive. As long as I suffer or I am in pain, I feel that this person is remembered, is alive. Which raises the question, do we have the right to move on from mourning? There's always this thing that, of course, we have to mourn as long as we need, and there is no possibility of establishing or saying how long it should last. And yet, at the same time, we are always told we should move on. Now, mourning is different from whether it is a personal tragedy or a national catastrophe, or in the case of the Jewish people, mourning was not just for one person, and for us as well. The death we have caused, the death we are causing today, that kind of mourning, which is collective mourning, is much more charged ethically. So of course, you can't in 3 minutes talk about this topic, but it's just, I think, is the kind of question this painting asks us. So number 35, we move on from mourning, both personally and collectively, by carrying forward what the mourning has taught us. We have the right to move on when mourning has fulfilled its, and this is particular for collective mourning, its ethical purpose. Mourning an unspeakable loss can become a moral act that is a way of acknowledging the loss, naming the injustice, protecting the memory, and allowing the pain to find an outlet of justice, of course, not of vengeance. And all the memorials of the Holocaust, I think they are a way of enabling society at large to mourn, because we're all responsible of these deaths, and they still, we are still accountable for them. So we can begin to walk forward only once mourning has truly been honored, has truly honored what was lost, has deepened our compassion, sharpened our conscience, and refused to let horror to be normalized. But we do not have the right to move on if mourning hasn't been honored, in the sense that trauma has been silenced, denied, or commodified. And unfortunately, trauma can be also commodified. And yes, if the systems that cause the suffering remain unchanged. But the good thing about the interesting thing about the painting is it does not end in paralysis nor resignation, I think. It is, I love this expression, it is grief in motion. It is grief in motion. It transforms sorrow into witness, into art, testimony, action, and enduring love. And the last thing, this is a question which I asked myself, because in the presence of painting of this kind, obviously, the issue is, what do I do, and the empathy, and I kind of had reflections of this kind, even when it comes to the cross of Christ. So when it applies both to the crucifixion of Christ, and I think also to this crucifixion of the Christ Jew. I don't think it is an invitation to empathy, but rather a challenge to it. To claim empathy requires authentic and tested moral reckoning. We have to ask, is my feeling of empathy a way of drawing near to this pain, or a way of clearing myself of it? We are very good at saying, oh, I feel so sorry, and then poof, and we change into something else. And we feel good about ourselves because we feel sorry. We cannot have access to authentic empathy unless we recognize our complicity and let this experience transform a sense of justice. If we approach the White Crucifixion as passive spectators, we fall under the indictment represented by these paintings. It is an indictment. By claiming empathy without repentance and commitment to justice, we risk appropriating suffering rather than witnessing it. This is why Chagall doesn't ask for pity. He asks for remembrance, accountability, and action in a world still capable of the same indifference. We are perpetrating the same crimes as we speak today. This is why empathy that doesn't lead to action and commitment to justice is just empty. So these are few thoughts. We have a few minutes for reflection and reactions. Obviously, this is this is always the problem of the Sunday theology classes. We have so little time. It's more an invitation really to look again at these paintings and to see the spiritual power they have when we spend time with them to look at them. Pamela?
First, thank you for bringing these paintings to our attention and discussing them. I'm very struck by the word you used in the notes, reclaim. That Chagall is reclaiming the cross and giving it back as a symbol of suffering and oppression. And I'm wondering whether he's also reclaiming the Jewishness of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
By the fact that he has placed the prayer shawl over Christ's body on his loins, is saying, remember, this is a Jewish man, and in Christianity, in Christian Europe particularly, it seems we've tried to eradicate the Jewishness, the essential Jewishness of Christ.
Of Christ, yes.
I think of our Reredos, for example, which is a magnificent structure, but the Christ, and he's not on a cross anymore, but he's wearing the vestments of an Anglican priest.
Yeah.
And it's such a stark contrast to what
Chagall is doing, yes.
In this, he's reclaiming the identity.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, that's certainly certainly an aspect of it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Pamela. Thank you, Pamela, for this. Yeah. Well, let's please.
I was just going to say to remember that the crucifixion at the time of Jesus was in fact the way the Romans killed anybody who engaged in any sort of armed resistance. I think there are thousands and thousands. There's one incident where maybe some incredible number of Jews were all crucified very shortly before the events.
Yes. Yeah. No, absolutely. This is the reason why the cross was not represented in art in Christianity before the 4th century, because up to that time it was still being used as an instrument of torture. And it was only after the Edict of Milan, I think, or around that time, that the cross was not used anymore for capital punishment, and it could slowly be used in worship in Christianity. But it took a long time. Yeah. Thank you. Please, Vinny.
I appreciate very much the way that you frame this, and also Michelangelo's Last Judgment, in that I really appreciate the liberty of artists in reframing many things. Like with this one, it's in a way, yes, Jesus is Jewish, but he was also persecuted by Jews. But then he flipped it. So it's very paradoxical and ironic, the whole picture.
Yes.
But artists have this way of helping us to think differently, like Michelangelo, to have this Last Judgment, which is actually a mockery.
Yes.
So I think the artists are really something.
Yes.
That really lift us up.
Yeah.
To look at things differently, and you were able to help us see it from that angle. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. This is why I thought it was like. When I don't know if I put it in the handout, but it is at the risk that people ask artists to make a work of art, true artists. So, I mean, when the Pope asked Michelangelo to paint the Last Judgment, he had no idea that he would do. He realized probably afterwards Michelangelo would do something that would be a challenge to the power structure that had commissioned that same painting, and I've seen it in when you start noticing this, and this is why artists very often are so feared by dictatorial regimes, including one which is around us at the moment, because they speak the truth, and they challenge in ways that are go very, very deep. And they are not directly Russian. So they are not they cannot be verbalized very easily. They impact the imagination, and through the imagination, really, they at least awake conscience. So real artists are very often the worst enemies of dictatorships and tyranny and power structures for that reason. But thank you. We have time probably for one last comment. Benita.
This is a really good question. How did this Jewish drinking baby blood or using baby blood, where does that come from?
So I don't know exactly the beginning of it, but the thing is that Christians were very suspicious of what Jewish people were doing in their worship, in ways similar to what pagans were very suspicious of Christians at the beginning of Christianity, because they worship in their homes in secret. So they thought, they are engaged in cannibalism, and they would persecute that for them. So Christians did the same thing with Jewish people, especially through the Middle Ages, finding phony ways of accusing them. But one of the things they suspected, of course, they had to worship in secret because they were not allowed to. So what they are doing in secret, and there was this idea that they would drink the blood of children, so the blood libels of the Middle Ages are pogroms that were kind of unleashed on the basis of these accusations, and there's their resurgence in Russia in the 20th century. So that's
still here in certain Pentecostal evangelicals. Still.
Yeah, the anti-Semitism is just baffling. It's just absolutely how. The thing about how. In the form of Christianity, Messianic Christianity, especially in this country, there is on one hand the idea that if the moment in which the whole Jewish people is going to be converted to Christianity, Christ will come back in glory. To facilitate the conversion of all Christians, we have to facilitate the Israeli state. So the support of these movements, these Christian movements to Israel is not because they love the Jewish people. It's just because they want to have all them gathered in the same place to convert them more easily so that Christ can come back in glory. But the anti-Semitism is really deeply, deeply rooted in these forms of Christianity. And this is really unconceivable. Yeah.
And we supposedly drink the blood and eat the body.
Oh, Christ, yeah. We are doing it, yeah. I was running against that, yeah. Good. I'm afraid I have to go because I'm subdeacon at Mass, but have fun for the next 3 weeks and see you back in September, yeah? At least for the lectures. Sì.
Bene,
Grazie. Ne parleremo, va bene? E buon...
Dov'è l'altro? Questo è a Chicago, l'altro dov'è?
L'altro l'ho messo mi sembra che l'ho messo è qui al MoMA. Qui al MoMA, però non è on display, non è esposto. C'è un sacco di roba che... Ci vediamo. Ok, ciao Caroline. Ciao.
This is the weekend you said with Nizza, this is
Yes,
the
I know,
weekend,
yeah.
this was perfect.
Yeah.
You're brilliant.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Catherine.
Have a good break.
Thank you.
for all you
Bye.
do.